Welcome back to Hilaal Live. Now, Israel has recalled for consultations its ambassador to South Africa following the latest statements from the ruling party here. The ANC has repeatedly said it would support the parliamentary motion calling for the Israeli embassy in South Africa to be closed. Joining us now from Africa for Palestine is Alie Khomane. Alie, assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and jazakallah so much for joining us.
Alaikum salam, and thank you for having us.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Brother Alie, it was going to happen, wasn't it? That given all of the pressure that Israel and, of course, its diplomats in South Africa were facing from various sources, that this had to happen for the Israelis to recall the ambassador.
Oh, yes, they had no choice. We believed that Israel was going to suffer worse embarrassment, worse than when they were kicked out of the African Union live in the session. I think the embarrassment that they were going to receive when the South African Parliament votes overwhelmingly to, number one, expel the Israeli ambassador to South Africa, and number two, to sever all ties with apartheid Israel. It was going to be a serious embarrassment if that thing happens when the ambassador is here in the country. And they've done this before, the Israelis. Whenever they're being called out or they're being held accountable, they simply just whistle back into their own little shells. They've done that in Turkey in the past, where when they are being called to be accountable for their state's actions, they simply up and leave. So this was bound to happen, given what was bound to happen in the next few hours, if not minutes, when the National Assembly votes on the motion brought by Julius Malema of the EFF to sever all ties with apartheid Israel and to expel the ambassador.
Alie, I want to chat with regards to the amount of protests that have been happening in South Africa, because that in itself does bring in that pressure. The ANC has a long-standing relationship with Palestine. The EFF has made it clear, even when they were founded 10 years ago, that they stand with Palestine. But I want to look at civil society. A huge role has been played by civil society, hasn't it? Especially you gentlemen as Africa for Palestine, in the role that you have played in civil society protest.
We think civil society is the backbone of any democracy, is the backbone of any developmental state. The Palestine advocacy in this country has been very powerful, and it's been very impactful, not only from Africa for Palestine, but from many organizations across the length of breadth of this country that support for Palestine. It goes through from political organizations to the trade union movement to faith-based organizations and to traditional organizations and so on. We think it's monumental. If you remember, a couple of years back, the BDS movement at the time, before we rebranded to Africa of Palestine, we got on a campaign to boycott Woolworths. It was a enormous campaign to conscientize South Africans that buying products that are imported from Israel does not only make us complicit in the human rights violation of Palestinians, but it makes us enablers into their human rights violation, the occupation of their lands. A few days back, Woolworths announced that it no longer has Israeli products on its shelves, and that is a significant victory for South African civil society. It shows that our voice matters. It shows that when we speak, somebody listens and somebody takes action. Since 2012, if not 11, I remember, when COSATU, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, made the first call to expel the Israeli ambassador, that call was reminiscent throughout civil society. We've been calling this for a number of years now. Kosi Mandla Mandela, the grandson of Nelson Mandela, has been very vocal about it also since he joined the solidarity movement in this country. So this is a result of the hard work of people on the ground, people in communities, people in churches, in mosques, people in neighborhood WhatsApp groups, people in workplaces like you and myself, people in media. So this is a victory for civil society. It shows that when we speak in one voice as a collective, the powers that be listen.
Alie, I want to bring up the Woolworths statement that came out, of course, and I know Africa for Palestine had quite a massive role in playing for that. Is there a sense of satisfaction? And do you feel what Woolworths has done in terms of not stocking Israeli products, do you think that's going to have a ramification in terms of other retailers who stock products from that part of the world?
Of course, this is one of the 101 or consumer boycott for beginners rule book. We studied consumer boycotts from the anti-apartheid movement of the 60s and the 70s that was started in London. So when you do a consumer boycott, you target one company. And when you target that one company, you press on it so that when that company gets to do what you are calling out for, other companies will realize, hey, if we don't if we don't do it as those civil society guys say, they're coming for us. So this is a significant victory. It sends a message to many companies because Woolworths is a very big company, not only locally but globally. This sends a message to other companies in this country that if you are cooperating economically with Israel, you're going to become a target, you're going to be targeted, and you're going to be pressured. You're going to be pressed to a breaking point. So it's a significant victory in the consumer boycott sector. And surely, if you are a South African company, if you're a South African supermarket or a South African goods and services dealer who provides services or products from Israel, be scared. Be really, really scared. We're coming for you.
Alie, whatever happens, of course, in the National Assembly, the ramifications across the African continent, because we've seen in the global south the support for Palestine. If whatever happens in the National Assembly occurs and it filters through to the continent, do you feel not only the global south, but also countries within the West may also be pressured into potentially cutting ties with Israel?
Of course, South Africa as a young democracy is an example to the world. We are often touted as benchmarks of what a democracy must look like, and of course, with our own problems, with our high rate of violence, sometimes xenophobia, and so on. But in general, our democracy shines bright in the world, and people look upon us for guidance as to how to build a stable constitutional democracy based on human rights. So this decision that's going to come out of the National Assembly is an indication to the African continent. We are one of the biggest countries in terms of GDP, economically, politically in the continent, let alone in SADC. I think we are next to the giants in this continent. So when we take a step, many countries look upon us. I mean, look at Namibia on the issue of Palestine. When we take a particular decision, Namibia follows, not only because we are like a big brother, which is not true, by the way. We are equals in the multipolar world, but they look for guidance from us on this particular question. And when South Africa takes a position on Palestine, diplomatically and internationally in international bodies, Namibia is always supporting, we are always supporting Namibia as well, just for an example. So when this decision is taken by the National Assembly, most countries in the continent will look to South Africa and say, look, we look for guidance from those. If they are doing this, this should be a directive to us. And of course, we are in BRICS, in one of the most powerful multi-state organizations. Just to give information, President Cyril Ramaphosa is the chairperson of BRICS, and in the next few weeks, if not days, he's going to chair a meeting which Palestine is going to be on the table. So these are some of the bodies where when the president of South Africa says, as South Africa, we have taken a decision to expel the Israeli ambassador, to sever all ties with apartheid Israel. Other international bodies, big powers like Russia and China, which are in BRICS, will look to South Africa and say, look, if you are taking this decision, we think you are leading in it, and we can do the same. So not only are we, will we influence the Southern Africa, SADC, the African continent, and the global south, but most big powers in the world would look onto South Africa and say, look, if they are doing it, it means it's the right thing to do.
Ali, shukran so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live. Much appreciated.
Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you. That's Ali Khomane from Africa for Palestine. After the break, I'll have your latest in news. Do stay tuned.